Hey guys, in this video I'll be covering my pool plans for the upcoming arc where Gabranth will be featured as a synergy unit. You can refer to the cropped infographic on the left hand side of the slide, which was derived from the thewereotter's global forecast to see which events these are, and this includes the Divine Odin event, Ursula's Lost Chapter, as well as the Heretics event featuring Fujin. I will of course also be including a full link to the global forecast in the video description as well, so you can use that if you are interested in checking out the full forecast. Very quick disclaimer and introduction about the purpose of the video. As with all my pool plans video, the purpose is really just to share my plans for the upcoming events in DFFOO Global, and very importantly, the reason behind why I make the decisions to skip or pull for certain units. There is really no one optimal or one right way to play the game. There are of course many different approaches, considering that there are many different units and of course many different playstyle and preferences in this game. Therefore, my plans, which is really tailored towards my own preferences, may or may not be ideal for you. For this reason also, I always strongly recommend everyone to do their own research into the character's kit so that you can make the best informed decision for yourself whether or not the character is suitable for your playstyle and your roster. I will also be focusing on the main characters on the banners rather than every single character on the banner, just so that this video will not be too lengthy. Very quickly about how I did in the last arc, which was Kam'lanaut's FRBT arc. Kam'lanaut was really the character that I was gunning for the early Shinryu era, because with the right setup, with the launches and ice enchant and disables on the enemy, he can hit a very high 80% increased force bonus during his force time. So on his banner, I went in first with 100 tickets, and that's really because I was at ticket cap and I needed to spend some tickets so that I can redeem my tickets from the co-op shop at the hunt shop. But then thereafter, I didn't really get anything much with the first 100 tickets, so I went in hard with gems. On the 45k gems plus the free multi-pool, I managed to get 2 of his FRs and his BT weapon as well, which was really good, and that allowed me to actually save on my BT tokens. My Kam'lanaut is now fully maxed out, including I believe a 2/5 ultimate weapon as well. And based on this, I actually skipped on every other banner on this arc. I didn't really pull on Paladin Cecile because I already had all his weapons, just minus his BT, and I wasn't really interested in Paladin Cecile's burst weapon. I skipped both of Dash's banner because I already have Machina fully built from the Lufenia era, including Machina's burst weapon, which I have fully maxed out as well. And this is really great for me, at least, because I really like the Machina and Kam'lanaut combo. If you've seen some of my more recent videos, you see that both of them together with the right setup can actually complete every Shinryu stage to date. The last banner here was the Tidus banner, and initially I was planning to go for Tidus, but considering that I spent 45,000 gems for Kam'lanaut, I actually decided to just skip Tidus for now. I did see the live stream that was released recently as well, and they did announce one special FR to be released on August 5th, 2022. So I'm just waiting to see what FR weapon that is. Depending on what it is and how I do in the next arc, I may still come back to pull for Tidus, but likely not, considering that I've managed to get by pretty well without him so far. Alright, so coming to the first event in Gabranth FRBT arc, we have Divine Odin coming up. On this arc, there will be 2 banners featuring Gabranth FR. The first banner will also be featuring Gabranth's burst weapon alongside Pain and Sars. The second banner will actually feature Root, Steiner and Lil, including Lil's burst weapon instead of Gabranth's burst. Gabranth actually receives a massive rework because his kit is pretty outdated, along with the usual damage boost and increase in HP dumps across the kit. His attack and defense down debuffs get stronger as well, and his EX actually now provides 1 free skill use after use, and this will help in his longevity. His burst weapon, newly released on this event, actually provides some nice offensive auras, certainly at least average to decent amongst other burst weapon auras, and it does increase relevant stats such as breath and HP damage caps, which is always nice to have. And this actually, his BT aura actually upgrades his signature framed debuff to a new version that further reduces the enemy's attack, HP damage done, and HP damage resistances. Gabranth's force weapon, which is also newly released on this event, does have the force effect that when you break an enemy, it will plus 30% the force bonus, and when you attack a debuff enemy, you will plus 15% on the force bonus. My thoughts on Gabranth's FR: the attacking a debuff enemy is pretty easy to fulfill, considering that Gabranth himself will land debuffs on the enemy, and the plus 15% is similar to what Tidus got in his FR weapon. However, for the first conditional, which is breaking an enemy to increase the force bonus by 30%, this conditional is really much more situational to fulfill, because not many characters actually can re-break or constantly break the enemies, and if you are not utilizing some sort of re-breaks or instant breaks or brave reset mechanic, the enemy's brave usually only resets once every 6 turns, and you obviously want to get the plus 30% every turn inside force time if you could. This means that Gabranth's force weapon is really geared towards characters that features multiple re-breaks across their kit, and really not many characters actually have this. Gabranth himself of course has the re-breaks in his kit, so you could have him go into force time and have him go into BT mode after that to capitalize on this, but this obviously requires very heavy investment in both his force weapon and a fully maxed out burst weapon for Gabranth. The question I ask myself is, why would I as a player want to go after Gabranth force and burst weapon, unless maybe if he's a favorite, when we have Tidus that was recently released and is still available now? If I'm a new player, I would probably go after Tidus FR and burst, which would require the same level of investment as Gabranth, but will at least give you a force time bonus that is much easier to fulfill. Gabranth's overall damage output, while it has been buffed up significantly and is, I guess, pretty decent, I don't think is as good as the potential that Tidus has. If Tidus is fully built and if his burst aura is active, he can output much more higher damage than Gabranth, and so you would probably get better results most of the time using Tidus as your main FR and burst and damage dealer. Of course, there can be arguments made to say that Gabranth is overall a more utility oriented character, and it probably isn't fair to compare him to Tidus. But that being said, there aren't going to be many circumstances where you would want to bring Gabranth along as your main FR and burst character over someone like Tidus. And if you are really just wanting Gabranth mainly for his utility, then you could probably just use him up to his LD and save your FR and BT investment for someone who could probably deal out higher and more consistent damage than Gabranth's force. Quick mention about the other characters on this banner: other than Gabranth, Pain, Lil, and Root would also receive reworks across their kit to bump up their damage more in line with the current meta. One notable thing about Lil is that his Field Burst, which is his S1, now also guarantees a launch when it's used. Overall, I'm not very interested on the second banner with Lil. Lil is primarily a launch unit, and the biggest drawback really about Lil's kit is that a lot of his launches are really only for himself. So if you're looking for someone to set up launches, you need to actually include Lil in your main party. You can make the argument that his field burst would drop down the gravity debuff on enemies, and this would make the enemies easier to launch, but even with the gravity debuff, it doesn't really guarantee launches every turn for characters other than Lil. I guess for Lil, the one good thing is that he is released very closely after Kam'lanaut, so you could, I guess, potentially combine Kam'lanaut's FR with Lil launches and Lil's burst mode, but that does require then investing heavily in Lil himself, and I'm not really sure whether that's a worthwhile investment. So all things considered, my plan on this event and these two banners is to actually skip. I do have Gabranth up till his LD, and I'm happy enough to just use Gabranth, EX and LD on this event, and saving my FR and BT resources for upcoming events. The second event in this arc would be Ursula's Lost Chapters, featuring the return of Ursula from Final Fantasy IV. Some changes to Ursula's kit beyond the standard damage adjustments is that her EX now also recovers one use of her Chakra. Ursula's Force Weapon, which is newly released on this banner, would have the effect that if your party's Brave is at least 20% of their max Brave when you start your turn, you will plus 15% the force time, and if your party's Brave is at cap, so having the orange numbers, when starting your turn, the force bonus will be plus 30%. I'm not 100% sure since I don't play the JP version of the game, but my understanding is that if you do fulfill the 100% conditional, you get both the bonuses, which is a plus 45%. The bright side also is that Ursula herself has access to Chakra, which is an instant turn ability that provides 100% M-Brave battery to the entire party, and since it itself is an instant turn ability, it does drastically increase the force bonus during her force time, assuming you do have her force levels invested. The secondary character on this banner will be Sync, and some of the changes she receives is that both her Home Run Swing Plus and her Earthquake Plus now resets her stun debuff to 1 stack. In the past, it actually completely removes the debuff, so it makes her stun debuff a bit more consistent now. On top of that, her EX also now delays all enemies, whereas in the past it actually only delays the target. I skipped Ursula the first time when she debuted, so my plan here is to actually go in with tickets to score all her gear and FR. There are two key reasons here, the first of which is by this event I'll be capped on tickets again, considering I skipped Gabranth's event, and I will need to spend some tickets in order to claim the tickets from the co-op shop in Gabranth's event, as well as claiming my tickets from the Hunt token shop as well. So I might as well just go in for Ursula with her gear. The second reason is I actually do like Ursula's Force Weapon. Sure, on paper, it's just at most a plus 45%, and nothing, in fact, all FRs to date doesn't really come close to Kam'lanaut's FR, but the key thing about Ursula's FR is that it is a conditional that many characters can potentially fulfill, and if you have something like Garnet's PT plus aura, you will likely be starting your turn fulfilling the conditionals anyway. And on top of that, if you use instant turn abilities, that also batteries the party, and this is actually quite common, so Ursula herself has it, but you could use someone like Kral or Braska or Penelo, which were all recently released and all having instant turn battering attacks in their kit. You could use that to fulfill the conditional and also massively boost the bonus time due to the nature of using instant turn abilities. Overall, I would say her FR, while the bonus damage isn't anything too exciting, it is pretty comparable to other FRs. The conditional to which you get the bonus is pretty interesting, and at least opens up new dimensions of play versus the other FRs that I've pulled for before. So with all these reasons, I would be going in with tickets until I score her gear and at least one copy of her FR, but obviously hopefully more. The third event here would be the raid event featuring Fujin's FR. Some notable changes that Fujin receives is that both her S1 and S2, as long as they are the Plus version, now guarantees a launch. When it comes to Fujin's FR, I have to say it is really very lackluster. It may probably even be a candidate for one of the worst FRs in the game, mainly due to the conditionals. The first conditional is pretty common and standard in that when any player does wind damage, you will plus 20%, and the good thing though is Fujin herself enchants the entire party with wind, so at the very least you will be expected to get the plus 20% during your turn. However, the second conditional is downright terrible, and the second conditional is when Fujin herself launches an enemy, you will plus 40% the gauge. While plus 40% can stack with the plus 20%, and this gives you theoretically a total of 60% in one turn, the second conditional is a very selfish conditional in that you only get 40% if Fujin herself launches the target. If any other character triggers the launch, you will not get the 40% at all. This makes it very difficult to get consistent increases in Fujin's FR because Fujin herself doesn't even have a burst weapon and cannot go into burst mode. So to try to capitalize this FR as much as possible, you will want a way to give Fujin as many turns as possible. So for example, using Ram with a swap turns to swap Fujin's turn in, and even then, you will not be getting the plus 40% every turn, but really only every alternate turn at best. And this already requires some degree of setup to enable this. And while yes, for Kam'lanaut and his FR, it does require a great deal of setup as well, I think the comparison isn't fair because at the very least, with the setup, Kam'lanaut's FR gives you a plus 80% per turn, and many characters can actually fulfill this plus 80%. Fujin's FR, in contrast, requires some degree of setup as well, and even then you are not even getting plus 60% a turn. So the payoff that you get is very lackluster. The secondary feature character on this event will be Caius, and some notable changes he gets in his kit is that his Eye of Bahamut Plus now has 100% HP splash damage if at least one of his chaos debuffs are up, so this should be fairly easy to fulfill. His Guardian effect further extends his debuffs by plus 1 turn, which is always nice to have with his Doom debuff, and his EX now delays all enemies by 1 turn. As a debuffer, he is actually fairly solid, and he does have his signature Doom debuff that will re-break the enemy each time it ticks, and that could be one way to fulfill Gabranth's FR if you did pull and max out Gabranth's FR. Overall though, my plan is to skip this event. I have zero interest of having Fujin outside of maybe her LD call ability, which I already have access to. I also do already have all of Caius's gear, including his burst weapon, which is still at base burst weapon, and so I don't really see a need to pull for either of these banners. Finally, on this part of the video, I'll be covering which characters that you could potentially aim for if you are low on resources. And this is actually a good time to actually save your resources because we are going to be getting pretty good characters from September onwards, with key characters such as Terra or Luna Freya or Rinoa, and I believe Tifa is coming out after that as well. And all these characters are pretty hyped up in regards to their FR and their BTs. This arc though, I have to admit, when I was doing this slide, I'm sort of really being very generous in some of my evaluation here. But all things considered, I think in this arc, the character that probably would provide most players value would be Ursula herself. Her Chakra is pretty unique because it guarantees batterying to max breath even with breath gains reduction in Lufenia and Shinryu stages. And in the Force Time era, instant turn abilities actually jump in value because of how they can increase the Force Time gauge and the Force Time bonus. So this gives a lot of added value to Ursula and her Chakra ability as well. Her FR I think is fairly beginner friendly as well. I would imagine that most players would have pulled for Garnet, and even if you don't have Garnet, having Ursula herself is an easy way to rapidly increase her FR time bonuses. In terms of the second category of role fulfillment, I really don't think there's many characters that's really noteworthy, but I guess if you're really very new to this game, a little bit of a small case I guess can be made for Pain, Sync, Will and Gabranth. Depending on what you're missing in your roster, if you really need a strong support character with maybe some debuffs as well, Pain herself is pretty decent. Sync and Lil fulfills nice damage dealers in their role, but I really have to say, if you really need a strong damage dealer, you might as well just go in for Tidus or Machina, who at current point in time should still be available on banners. And lastly, we have Gabranth, and to me I think the main value in Gabranth's kit isn't really his force or burst weapon, but more towards his utility in landing debuffs and being able to counter with debuffs, which I think is really only true to himself. I guess maybe characters like Oren can land a debuff and they counter, but Gabranth is really so-called the true character that counter debuffs on enemy attack. Having the instant break utility in Gabranth's kit also further adds to his utility, and in this game I really think that utility is always something good to have if you have the resources to spare for it. But in terms of Gabranth's FR and BT, considering the steep investment they require and the fact that we are in early Shinryu where those resources are scarce, you may probably want to save your force weapon and burst weapon resources for other characters instead. I was actually considering even not including Sync and Lil on this slide, but then it would pretty much be an empty slide with only Ursula, Pain and Gabranth. So I guess we can make an argument that Sync and Lil maybe does have some value, but they're really facing stiff competition because, like I said, if you really want a strong damage dealer, you could maybe invest in Tidus or Machina. There's really very little incentive to fully max out Sync and Lil at this point in the game. There's probably going to be quite a number of people who will disagree with this comment, but again, when it comes to characters' value and who to pull for, a lot of this is very subjective and open for debate. And really, again, at this point I want to really emphasize that this is really just my opinion. May or may not be correct, but that's what I think these characters bring to the table at this stage of the game. Well, that's it for this video. In summary, I'll be skipping Gabranth's banners, I'll be spending tickets going for Ursula and her gear, and I'll be skipping Fujin's banners at the tail end of this arc. As always, I hope this video has been helpful, and if you enjoy the content, do leave a like, comment or subscribe. It really helps a lot. Till then, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!